Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Issa Aremu joins us now. He's a delegate at the National Conference, but don't forget, he's also the Vice President of Nigeria Labour Congress. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much, Ramadan Karim.
Yeah, thank you. Well, looking at this, you must have caught some part of Dr. Ashiru's submissions of the National Conference. He just doesn't agree about how the conference constituted, how deliberations there went. And, he falls amongst that group that just said, look, that wasn't the way to go. For him, the conference couldn't have achieved much. They were selected, as he put it. But from your perspective, is that the case? Was that the feeling you got from that conference?
Well, my very good friend Ashiru, he's an academician, so he can afford the luxury of being academic.
Are you saying he wasn't realistic?
Well, I didn't say so. I say.
Are you suggesting he's not realistic?
I say because being academic, and that's also very healthy to be academic. But this is a conference that has been inaugurated by the president on the March 17th. With a view of addressing pragmatic problems facing the country. Some of our views. Including me. I had a lot of reservation initially when this conference was conceived, but we've moved on since then. I think what we need to do is to do what I call a kind of SWOT analysis of this conference. We look at the strengths, the weaknesses, and possible threat to the conference.
What was the strength?
Yeah, I think the first major strength, if you ask me, is that when the president set up the Presidential Advisory Council, we were working out the modalities, how to get the conference on. And the greatest strength of this conference is that it worked out a kind of all-inclusive modalities. Initially it was supposed to be conceived as conference of ethnic nationalities, which will have been quite exclusive. Certainly people like us wouldn't have been there, and it's quite commendable on the part of the president that he made it more inclusive. And that's why at this conference, you have two faces of Nigerians. You have market women, even fiscally challenged. You have the youths, professionals, labor.
But is that what played out at the conference? Because people thought they ended up pitching their tents with their regions.
No, that's certainly not. In fact, for the fact that the conference had lasted so long and we have achieved, what we have achieved so far is due to the all-inclusive roles of pan-Nigeria organizations like ours. Because we played, while regional leaders and self-acclaimed zonal commanders, could talk for themselves, we decided to talk for Nigeria in line with the perspective of the president. And I think the president is quite clear. We cannot be more holier than the Pope. We need to go from, I think, to do proper assessment of this conference, take the inaugural address of the president. What was his expectation? How have we live up to that? And I think the president says so. We must have come with our different backgrounds, mindset, but we should think Nigeria and work out Nigerian solutions. And Timley, I want to tell you that the second strength is that within these 3.5 months or so, if you take the proper census, at least the last count, the rough counting I've done now, we've worked out close to well over 500 recommendations on 19 critical success factors. We had about 20 committees. And even the last one, the so-called contentious on devolution of powers, we've virtually reached consensus on about 90% of those core areas. No, let me first of all tell you that what I'm saying here is that we have close to well over 500 recommendations. Committee on energy, committee on labor sports, and youths, committee on industry and investment. You can take the sense of properly. Foreign policy, there are a lot of robust ideas that have been generated, on public finance, on immigration, citizenship, and even on religion, which we thought would be so contentious. That was the first committee report we took, and I was highly impressed that we could weather the storm on religious issues. There was a broad consensus. The two co-chairmen, Archbishop Ajakai, who represented the Christian group, and of course Lemu, who came from the Muslim community. It was amazing, the kind of consensus. And one of the critical decisions they reached, which for me is very significant for us, is that we should remove the state government government role from religious affairs, especially, financing pilgrimage, whether to Mecca or to Jerusalem. And for me, that is quite a remarkable sense of success.
A lot of people thought that some of those committees, some of the resolutions or recommendations they made is something that could be easily implementable or pushed even with the National Assembly or through executive fiat. We didn't really need a national conference to, arrive at some of these decisions. Do you think we did?
No, again, I think what maybe so that we need to be a bit systematic in our discourse. Again, I've told you the point of departure will be the inaugural address of the president. From day one, when he was setting up this conference, he knew we had the National Assembly in place. And he made the point, the conference is meant to complement, it's not a substitute for the effort of National Assembly. Because there are broad national issues, that have been discussed. A lot of people are passionate about other issues that the third National Assembly had not really addressed. And that's why we had this conference to address them. But in doing so, we should, there are policy issues which are meant for the executive to implement. There are issues that are bordering on legislation, which we need the support of the National Assembly to get through. There are constitutional issues which you even need the broad consensus of the whole country, to get bought into before you make the amendment. But what I'm saying is that let me land on the issue of the strength. What is also remarkable is that these recommendations, we achieved them through broad consensus. We never had disagreement in terms of acrimony, and that takes a lot of negotiation, a lot of discussions. And for a country as diverse as you may not know the import of this. Most countries that have disintegrated, that have gone under, and we can see them under our nose, Sudan, for instance, which even after decimation to South Sudan, Sudan is in a mess, is because they couldn't engage in conversation, in dialogue. And for me, coming from Labour background, I think what we have achieved so far shows the capacity of Nigeria, to engage in conversation, even some of the highly contentious. And I didn't say any issues that I not discussed here.
The point I was trying to make is that in terms of the issues that concern policy, for instance, the things that easily could have been presented and, would have been passed. You don't think so?
No. That's why when we've come out with our report, which immediately, when we resume August 4, those issues are also being discussed. There are some that are policy issues that will be sent to the government. And they'll also assume that, as they say, common sense may not also be so common. Some of those issues may look so simple to you. They are also serious, issues that were debated and arrive at. Take for instance the issue of railway. It used to be the exclusive preserve of the federal government to handle railway. And then for us to reach a consensus to say you step it down to concurrent, states now have the right to do the investments, have legitimate claim. The same thing with power sector. That takes a lot of discussions between all the forces that work. Now it becomes policy issues, which must definitely go to the federal government to carry out.